Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, thanks for tuning in. I'm Katie and today I'm going to be trying out Arteza watercolour brush pens. Now, from the box of markers you've just seen, I'm sure you might have noticed that I have a small problem, and the sensible way that I chose to tackle this was to buy some more, of course. Anyone else guilty of that? Now, just as a disclaimer, I'm not sponsored or affiliated with Arteza, and I bought these with my own money and they were on offer on Amazon, and I don't have to have a scripted opinion on these either, so I'm just putting that out there. I've also got other watercolour pens to compare these with. I'll be using the Ecoline ones and then a bonus tester at the end of the video as well, but we'll concentrate on these two first for now. So as you can see, the colours are really nice and vibrant. You've got quite a nice selection for a 12 pack, can't grumble there really, and of course you can mix and match the colours together because they're all water soluble. So now seeing how they fare up with a wash of water. Some of the colours were more saturated than others, so for example the grey and the lilac, it took a bit of working and there wasn't a huge amount of colour payout, but that's not a bad thing, I don't think, because sometimes you want a more subtle effect with the pens rather than having a huge amount of colour, so that's nice, and you can always layer them up. It is water based after all. The other colours worked quite nicely, they blended out quite nicely. The only thing I can say, and this is quite common with watercolour pens, is that you still have the residual line beneath, so it doesn't fully remove it from the page, but you kind of know that with these kind of pens when you pick them up and try them out, and it's the same with some watercolour pencils as well. The only way you'll get a true watercolour effect is if you use watercolours, right? Moving on to the drawing, or is it a painting? I don't really know what you call it when you use something that combines two mediums. If you've got any ideas, leave a comment below. But what I've decided to do here is draw the same image out on the same watercolour paper and use a restricted palette just to keep it fair. So I've picked similar colours from the Ecoline as well as the Arteza and the bonus ones, which we'll come to at the end. Now the colour goes down really nicely and they blend in quite nicely as well. Again, you've still got that detailing underneath from the actual pen itself, but you can layer it up, which is what I'm doing now, and it's really nice. They blend beautifully. I'm quite impressed. I'm not a massive user of the actual brush fibres per se. I don't use them very often. When I do use these, I do prefer the actual felt pen types. However, these have gone down quite nicely. What I wouldn't use them for is actually dipping the brush off the pen into water and mixing it there. I kind of think that might dilute the ink inside the barrel. So me personally, I wouldn't recommend doing that anyway. You want your pens to last really. You want to end up with a huge box full like me because they've lasted you for years. So there wasn't a skin tone in this set, but it was only a 12 set, so what can you expect? And what I did was mixed the orange and the pink to get as close to a skin tone as possible for this particular picture. I don't think that's come out too bad. We've got nice shadows on there, and the areas where I didn't wash the ink around as much, we've got the natural highlights. It's looking good. It was nice to go in there with the details on the lips, that worked out quite nice, and working on the hair details, I can get the strands of hair noticeably separate from one another, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'm quite happy. And one of the benefits of the ink not fully dissolving in the water is you can still see them details through it, which is a good plus point. So far so good. What I decided to do was to use the red brush pen to make a contrast between the foreground and the background, and obviously that's going to mix into a nice purple, which it has done. Again, I'm quite happy. They blended quite nicely. You've still got that residual area. Gosh, I can't speak at the moment. What's up with me? You've still got that residual area, but I think that adds to the piece. And again, we just keep building the layers up. On the face as well, the two dots on the cheeks, they blended out beautifully. I did actually want the circular part to be there, it was part of the style of the drawing, and I thought the yellow was really nice and vibrant. Again, that just added a bit more contrast to the piece. So just adding the finishing touches. Again, I've used the same materials on each of the 3 pieces here for the details. So it's the Sakura Micron pens, and I also used the Uniball white gel pen as well to bring out the highlights, just to keep it all fair and to make sure I've got a good picture of each one. So in conclusion, with the Arteza brush pens, I'm quite happy with it. I can't grumble, they've worked out quite nicely. For a limited colour palette, you can still do quite a lot. So far, so good. So let's move on to the Ecoline pens. Now, these have been a favourite of mine. I find the saturation of colours great. They swatch out nicely as colours on their own, so if you're just using them for colouring, they're quite nice. They don't chew watercolour paper up, really. They can chew up cartridge and mixed media paper, I've found in the past. So if you're going to use them, I recommend using a nice watercolour paper, a nice thick one that can take it. They blend out beautifully with the water. You don't quite get as much of a shadow behind it. However, they do activate really easily, so they're great on a larger scale, but perhaps for this project, they might have just been a little bit too easily activated, but we'll get to that in a minute. However, they are one of my favourite pens. They do look more like a watercolour, which is good, and they travel nicely as well. I've been all over the world with these and they've kept going. I've had them over 18 months and they're still pretty juicy. So working in with the similar colours, you can tell straight away how quickly these activate, and it works really nicely on the background. We've got a very high saturation of colours there. However, doing the skin tones using the pink and the orange, it didn't look right. It looked far too saturated. The colours didn't look quite natural and they didn't really complement one another. And as you can see on the face, as soon as I added water on the nose and the lip area, it just flooded. And I tried really hard to get that to work and have more control over it, but it just didn't want to do it. So I would recommend these on a larger scale piece. I do like the colour saturation in itself, however, there is just not as much control there, which is quite disappointing. But bear in mind, these little pieces of watercolour paper are tiny. They're not really any bigger than my hand. So thank goodness for being able to add in the fine liner details there, because if I hadn't, I don't think this picture would have been saved. And having the white gel pen to highlight areas, it did bring it back, but if I be honest, it's not my favourite so far. The Arteza ones are still doing pretty good. And now for the bonus round. Yes, I will pop a link in the description below. These are my Poundland scented markers. They're water-based and they can behave like a watercolour pen. Now, the saturation's not amazing on these. You do have to work them in quite a bit, and if you watch the Poundland marker video, they don't smell that strongly either, so you're not going to have a nice scented piece. Now, if you're on a budget, a really tight budget, these are absolutely fine to work with. You do have to put in a bit more hard work, but if you think about it, you're gaining a bit of a stronger understanding on how these type of materials work, so it's not terrible. They're good to practice with. I'm actually quite surprised how much better these were than using the Ecoline ones. They're not as good as the Arteza ones, but to work with, they were better than the Ecoline, and it really surprised me. It really surprised me. The skin tone I managed to create, although she's a little bit on the pale side, it did work out quite nicely, and in some areas adding the water did slightly oversaturate it, but as we've seen from the Ecoline ones, it's nothing that can't be recovered from using the microns and a white gel pen. This video isn't about me telling you which materials are best or what to recommend. The Ecoline markers cost me about £17 when I purchased them, and they've lasted me a good 18 months. They've been a good investment. They're just not great on smaller pieces, but they are good pens. The Arteza ones, however, they were £13.99 off Amazon and they were on offer at the time. They're not a huge amount difference in price, however you have got more control, and if you're working on a smaller scale, they're good for that. And if you're on a real budget, as we can see now, the Poundland scented markers, and I'm sure there's dollar store equivalents for the US, they can do a job as well. So if you're just messing about with materials, they're absolutely fine for that. I just wanted to show a comparison between all three, and if I be honest, I'm actually most pleased with the Arteza ones. The Poundland ones come in at a close second, and unfortunately the Ecoline ones didn't really do what I wanted them to do on this one. But let me know in the comments which one you think's the best out of all three of them, and if you've got any ideas for me to do a challenge with these pens again, drop it in the comments and I'll have a look and see what I can put together. With the micron and gel pen details added in, it's looking good. The colour's not as saturated, kind of expected that, but I'm quite happy with this one. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget to hit the like button if you have. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out on any future videos. If you want to see the Poundland marker video, the link will be in the description. Just want to say thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye!